Welcome to Bat Therapy, psychology of Batman, superheroes, and other comic book characters. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We are your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources. Oh boy, today we're talking about a good one.
Yes. We're gonna go away from the comics for just a little bit. And this is the summer of infamy, and I felt like it would be an injustice if we did not talk about Cersei Lannister. Game of Thrones is one of those. It's one of those things. It was like almost like zeitgeist, like the way it just took hold of just society.
Yeah.
When it came out, and I was spoiled because I jumped on the train super late. And so I think I started watching Game of Thrones at the end of like when season 7 was out. I think is when I started watching it. So I was very, very spoiled. I never had to like wait very long to see what would happen, and like by the time I had fully caught up, I think I waited like 3 or 4 months before season 8, and then that was a disappointment. So that's where it was, but it took me forever to get on the train, but once I did, I was like, my God.
I might have been the opposite. So I read the first book before the show came out. So I am from a nerd family.
No.
Yeah, I know. It's shocking. It's very shocking. So science fiction, fantasy, especially books, very big in my family. In fact, I know very little, very, very little about science fiction, fantasy compared to the rest of my immediate family. So I knew about Game of Thrones. I read the first one. And then I'm assuming everybody listening to this knows there are spoilers. And if you don't know by now, you've had plenty of time. But
No,
when
I don't feel sorry for anyone. No, not
when
at this point.
finally got to the end of this thick book and they killed off my favorite character, Ned Stark, I said, screw this. Why would I torture myself further? Why would I put in all this effort and energy just so you can do me wrong again? And then after, I think season 2, I think season 2 was just coming out, and my roommate at the time was like, oh my God, this show's so good. And so we watched, and I was like, oh, okay, and at that point, things were running really closely to the book, so I didn't even really need to watch season 1, which is nice. So I got to fast forward over Ned Stark dying. Or was that season 2? I forget how they do it in the show. But anyway,
Ned died in the season finale of season 1. But it was,
there you go. Yeah,
it was on the nose though. Like it was Sean Bean. Like as soon as I saw that Sean Bean was Ned Stark, it was one of those things. I'm like, I guess.
But when you're reading the book, it doesn't say soon to be played by Sean Bean.
Yeah, that's true. But this is what's so bad. That first season was so well written that I knew that Ned Stark was going to die. But it was so well written that when I was watching it, by the time it got to that, I was still absolutely heartbroken and devastated, even though I knew it was coming. It's like it's like if you're watching a dinosaur movie and you know the asteroid hits at the end. It's like, I'm gonna hate this. But like
you're watching The Land Before Time, you go, oh, all y'all are so dead.
Right. I'm like, man, good thing Littlefoot hasn't grown up in 19 movies. Like good thing his foot's
they
still
aged
little.
Differently back then. Yeah. I still watched most of Game of Thrones. I stopped reading at that point. So sorry for people who read the books, because you haven't read the books, right?
No, haven't touched.
And I think he still hasn't finished it, and I kind of
It's
get
like I
that.
think he's what, three. Are there like 3 books left?
I don't know.
I think it's
I don't
like
know.
3 books left. And at this
That's a
point,
lot of
he's just
pressure at this
enjoying
point.
his old age.
You
I
know
don't
what?
blame him.
Yeah, go have fun with your
Yeah,
wolves on your,
yeah. I don't.
doesn't he have some wolf sanctuary or something?
I would not be surprised.
So, yeah, I stopped the books after the first one, and really, I am a Fairweather fan. I am a Fairweather fan of Game of Thrones. I only watch because the people around me really wanted to watch. And I would get, because at the end of almost every episode, I just felt bad.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those. It's one of those things. Like it's Game of Thrones is one of those shows where every episode you're gonna see something that's like, yeah, that was epic, but you're also gonna be like, oh, that character died, or oh, but
Hmm.
that's horrible, and or it's like a cliffhanger. And it's like, ha, see you in 2 years, suck. I'm like, oh, come on, man. And I never had to like I said, I'm spoiled because I never had to deal with that. But throughout,
Mm.
I just had friends, and they were like, dude, watch Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, game like it's so crazy. You gotta watch it. And it took forever to give in because and here's quick story. um there was one time I was hanging with a group of friends and we were like just out of college and we were all about to we went in to visit a friend, and that whole week we had been building up like, we're finally gonna get off work. We're gonna go and we're just gonna hang out and have a house party and get trashed, and it's gonna be great, right? We're talking it up the whole weekend. We finally get down there, and I proceed to get trashed. That was the plan, right?
Mm.
They everyone else there has like maybe 1 or 2 drinks, and then one of the people's like, hey, I'm gonna show y'all Game of Thrones. And then everyone sits down to watch Game of Thrones. They're 2 beers in, I'm several drinks in. So I'm not picking up anything because they're introducing like 19 characters in one episode.
At least.
Right. I'm super confused and annoyed that everyone isn't partying hard with me, and they're just like, oh, this is so good. Oh my God, this show is great. And I'm just mad. I'm like, I wish I will never watch Game of Thrones. That I was so
So
upset.
I believe, though, if people are interested, don't you have somewhere on YouTube where your reaction videos are for Game of Thrones?
There
Isn't that how
are,
that started?
yes, there are a lot of reactions from me watching Game of Thrones with Team JVS.
Oh, yeah.
That
That's
is
right.
where, yeah, that's where I got like, I think that's where everything started taking off. Like some of those
Mm.
videos got like 50,000 views, like lots of views, like people just watching me, and Colleen was in some of them, just react to different things in Game of Thrones. So yeah, if you go on YouTube and just type in Keaton reacts, it's all there. It's all
Nice.
there.
Nice.
Some of it is some interesting language.
Ah.
I did not take Jon Snow dying very well. Um
Yeah, well.
it was, yeah, it was bad.
So, Game of Thrones,
Yeah,
plenty of villains. Plenty of villains
plenty.
to choose from.
Yes.
Why did you want to do Cersei?
So I wanted to do Cersei because I think she is one, I think she's by far the best villain in
Mm.
Game of Thrones. She also is the one in the show. I don't know if it lines up like this in the books, but in the show, she's the one that coined the term
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. She says it in Ned Stark. When you like, what is it? When you play the Game of Thrones, either you win or you die.
Yep.
And throughout the 8 seasons, she plays the game very well.
Yeah.
She takes some losses, but she comes right back. And
Mm.
it's there. And what's so interesting about Game of Thrones too is there are times when you will root for the villain because there's someone worse that you just hate. Like I
Yeah.
never thought once that I would ever be pulling for Cersei, but like in the later seasons when she's up against the crazy religious cult, I'm
Mm.
totally pulling for her. I'm like, yeah, yeah, if it's them or Cersei, I choose Cersei, even though she killed Ned Stark and she's just this master manipulator and she's obviously this horrible person. Like, but there's the charisma and there's this, like, she's such a strong, powerful figure,
Mm.
and she adapts to situations really well, but on top of that, unfortunately, she's constantly being proven right about not trusting people
Mm.
or only loving your family. Like, she's constantly being, because people keep, and she keeps because she keeps losing people around
Yep.
her, and she slowly just unravels because she's constantly trying to maintain control in an uncontrollable situation. and
Yeah.
and so and plus, she makes it to almost the end, which can't be said for most Game of Thrones characters. So honestly, she was easy to pick because as far as Game of Thrones villains go, she lasted longer than anyone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some people come in later and then but it is true. She's one of the very few characters that really lasts the whole time,
Yep.
especially when it comes to a villain. And I have to say, I think it takes a skill to create a villain who is truly villainous,
Hmm.
who you also don't grow tired of over time, you don't find overly predictable. I mean, it makes sense that there are patterns, and you can kind of see how Cersei's going to get in her own way.
Right.
So, for example, you were talking about how she keeps getting proven right. Well, of course, no one is going to be on your side when you treat them the way Cersei treats them.
True.
She is a liar.
Hmm.
She is a murderer.
Yep.
She's a manipulator. She only she only cares about her family, and she also makes it very clear that she gets to choose which family counts.
Yeah.
She is not on your side.
Mm-mm.
So why would you put her
Ever.
on yours?
Yeah.
So
Ever.
and so there are all these things about her that could make it so you're just itching for her to die. Just get rid of this character. But they do a really good job. I agree. I think there are a lot of people who find her just really compelling. And like you said, she does slowly unravel, or you see these nuances. They put her in a lot of different kinds of situations over time, like the hyper religious folks. That
Right.
was a new thing later on. And you see how she is related to her kids versus Jamie versus her father versus Tyrion, her other brother, and it just yeah, you stay compelled, and there are
Yeah.
times where you root for her,
Yeah.
and you go, "Oh my god, I'm rooting for Cersei right now. How did that happen?" They do a really good job with her character.
And it's funny because it's, on one hand, it's like I look at it and I say, I don't know if I ever actually can admit that I'm rooting for her, but some
Mm,
of the stuff that happens to her, I'm like, I hate her, but I don't hate her that much. Like, it was one,
mm,
like, it's one of the, I'm like, I mean, I can't stand Cersei, but it sucks that she has to bury all of her children. And it's like,
yeah.
I don't like Cersei, but I also don't think she deserves to be spat on naked in the streets. Like, like,
Mm,
there's so many things that happen in that show, and it's like, ooh, like, and it happens to a lot of characters. Like, I remember Theon. Like, I
mm.
couldn't stand him at all. And I'm like, ugh, but he didn't deserve to get his genitals chopped off. Like, I didn't hate him that much. Like, and yeah, that happens a lot in
You know,
that show,
the
but watching her get revenge on those characters after those things happen, it's like,
yeah.
I get it.
I Here's my struggle though with Cersei, and actually a number of people in the show is they're so hypocritical. And I
Very.
think they're so realistically hypocritical that I didn't like the show.
This reminds
So,
me too much of humanity. I'm cutting it off.
Yeah. It's like, oh, because, okay, naked, spat on, beaten in the streets, shame, shame, shame scene, right? That's a really horrific one. She would totally do that to someone else and not blink an eye.
Absolutely. As a matter
And
of
not
fact,
just to the person who did it to her, but she would do it to anybody that
absolutely.
got in
As
her
a matter
way.
of fact, that same season, when someone else gets whooped naked through the streets,
Hmm.
I think she like even laughs at it, like, ha, sucks
Yeah.
to suck. Like it.
But if it's her,
Right.
oh no.
How dare
And so
you?
that's the thing. Is she acts like it's because of what people have done to her, but if you pay close enough attention, she's treating people to that same level
Yes.
of horrificness,
Yes.
and they haven't really done anything to
Oh
her.
yeah.
Take oh crap, Brendan, is that his name? The one that gets shoved out the window
Oh,
at the very start.
her young Bran.
The Stark boy.
Yeah,
Bran,
Bran.
thank
Yeah,
you.
Bran.
See, this is gonna happen this entire episode. There are
It's
way too
okay.
many people. You know I can't do names.
It's
Oh, this
okay.
is terrible. This is like my worst nightmare.
Oh
Okay.
my god, you're turning into a mom.
So Bran runs in on her doing her brother, as you do
Yeah.
in Game of Thrones.
Okay. Yeah.
And what's her first reaction? Yo, Jamie, kick that kid out the window.
Yeah. She's just scared that he's gonna tell someone. And Jamie just, oh my god, that
He's a little kid.
yeah.
There were many options before shove the kid out the window. Ah, crap, he survived. Like, come on. And she didn't even do the dirty work herself.
Didn't even do it. And the
Didn't
thing
even do
is,
it
she
herself.
was so paranoid, I don't even think she asked. She didn't even ask Jamie to do it. Jamie just did it because he could tell how scared she was. And he's like, he just pushes him. He pushes him, then he goes, things I do for love.
But here's the thing with her, though. You see all her progression, you know for
Mm-hmm.
a fact Jamie did it because she wanted him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That and yeah, she's a very interesting character. I saw something really interesting online, and I don't remember where it was, but it was so interesting because so a lot of people talk about like narcissism with
Mm-hmm.
her and just what a good representation she is of essentially I'm better than everyone else.
Yeah.
The people around me, they're like a direct reflection of her. So if she sees any weakness, you are out. Like think about how disgusted she was when Jamie lost his hand.
Yeah.
And I saw this thing that I was like, "Oh my god, this is perfect." They were like, "What better example of narcissism than the only person you love is your twin?"
Oh wow. I never yeah.
Right?
Oh my goodness.
Pure
Oh,
genius.
that's brilliant. Yeah, that's
Right? I
brilliant.
mean, the only way that could get more narcissistic for her is if it was an identical twin.
Yeah. And it didn't help that like as she like when you hear stories about her growing up, she was just the prettiest girl in the
Mm,
land and everyone wanted her and everyone like pined after her. Like this is what she grew up. She grew up basically hearing you're the most beautiful girl in the
yeah.
seven kingdoms. Like
Yeah.
that's what she heard every single day. And I feel like I'm not giving her an excuse, but I feel like hearing that and only that when you also come from
Yeah.
like the richest
Yep.
family as well, it's like, man,
And so
it's harder to be humble.
yeah, and so you and I have talked about this before, like the Homelander syndrome. If you really are different from anyone, how much of it is potential narcissism versus the fact that maybe you are
Well,
superior in
maybe you
certain
are.
ways? But yeah, there were plenty of like rich people that were not Cersei-esque.
Starks were rich.
The Starks were rich. And now, I mean, some of it has to do with how you're raised, though. I mean, think about how
Hmm.
different it was with the Starks versus her. And but yeah, I mean, she had a lot of things to her advantage, but unfortunately, she really embraced cruelty. But you get the sense that her family probably didn't have a soft side to them too
Oh,
much either.
especially, I mean,
So
and her dad is a whole
yeah,
another thing, and I'm not gonna lie, he's another character.
Mhm.
Extremely villainous. But
Oh, I was
oh my
sad. I was
god,
so happy when he died.
I loved Tywin Lannister just because of how well he put his kids in their place, like
Uh,
constantly. And I loved watching him just punk Joffrey around because oh my god, I
Joffrey.
Joffrey was by
Joffrey,
far
Joffrey. The
the
worst.
the absolute worst. I hated him more than any other character in Game of Thrones. Period. Like people, I remember when I was going through the show, people were like, "Oh, you're gonna hate. There's someone worse. You're gonna hate Ramsay Bolton worse." I hated Ramsay Bolton, but I don't think I hated anyone as much as I hated Joffrey. Like there's a
Mm,
reaction video of me out there when Joffrey died, and I'm just on my
you just
bed
cheering.
cackling. I'm just on my bed, like watching it, and I'm so excited. Like the moment he drinks that wine and starts coughing, I'm like, oh snap, oh snap. It's like watching my favorite team, and I'm like, oh my god, they're about to score. Are they gonna score? Are they gonna score? Like that's me watching Joffrey die, and then like
It's
because
very interesting with Cersei with too. So
yeah,
she, because there's kind of, yeah, you see a little bit behind the curtain with her. She acknowledges to Marjorie at one point, because she was, you know, they're trying to match them all together, and
hmm
so she admits to Marjorie, "Hey, I know you're probably not upset that my son's no longer around. Like
yeah,
I know he was a terrible person." And at the same time was still her son. And also some of the things that made him a terrible person are things that she was actually honing and growing in him as well.
yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely interesting. And then she has very different children from each other too. I mean, her other children are
Marcel,
described
yeah,
very differently.
yeah, Marcella and Tommen were
Mhm.
like, and Tyrion even makes a point of it because at one point she says that like Joffrey is the way he is because of like basically as punishment for
Mm.
my incestuous relationship with Jaime. Like she says something like that to Tyrion, and Tyrion's reaction is like, well, at least Marcella and Tommen are good. Like, that's basically his answer. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Joffrey's the worst. Everyone knows it.
Yeah, yeah, I do wonder what Cersei thought of herself.
Well,
Because I mean, she every now and then you snuck a peek where it's like, okay, she has a better sense of reality than she lets on. Like when she makes these comments about Joffrey, she she seems to suggest that she knows the delicate nature of her life in some
mhm,
ways. And yet she's very good with covering it up. And that's what you oftentimes see with narcissism is the delicate parts of the self-esteem are just covered in layers and layers and layers and layers
right.
of this grandiosity and reactivity to the people around you in a way that clearly shows them you are lesser than me, you are objects to me, I'll use you and discard you. All of that kind of layers on thick to distract from what's going on underneath.
And what happens to her? The wildest reactions with her are when she realizes like that narcissistic attitude she has when she realizes actually you're not that great. That is
Mm,
when you see her do the wildest stuff like blowing
yeah.
up deceptive Baylor or oh like Ned Stark just figured out that you've been sleeping with your brother the whole time. She makes
Mhm.
sure I'm going to get him killed. And the first time and one of the main times it happens because we just talked about how like sought after Cersei Lannister is. Like she's just so beautiful and so gorgeous, and she's so excited to marry King Robert Baratheon. And
Uh-huh.
then I think they said like on their wedding night, he calls her by the name, but he calls her Lyanna Stark, like
Yep.
who he's actually in love with. And so that was that was had to be devastating to her, right? Like
Yeah.
throughout, it's like no one's more gorgeous than you. No one's more beautiful than you. She marries the king,
Mhm.
and the king doesn't want her. Like that
Yeah.
right there, like set probably just absolutely wrecked her, right?
Yeah.
And
And she even, yeah, it's funny. She is someone who I think it was constantly always aiming for something that she thought would be perfection, and then she would get it and it wasn't.
yeah,
And she just couldn't let go of the fact that there will not be perfection.
yeah, it was always always her story is always bittersweet and more bitter
Mhm.
than sweet
Yep.
normally. It's like even she becomes the queen.
Yep.
I mean, she becomes the first queen.
And then who ruins it? She does.
Yeah,
Because she cannot help herself.
yeah.
She cannot help but be two-faced, stab people in the back,
Mhm.
do whatever she thinks it takes to show her superiority, and then she literally gets King's Landing entirely destroyed
Yeah.
and rubble on top of her.
But at the same time, she never th- that's another thing that's interesting about her is she was completely fine with ruling through fear and not through charisma and love.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
cuz you see Marjorie Terrell, she the people just love her and she's
Mhm.
like, "Look at me holding this orphan baby." Like she Marjorie plays the game where it's like she is a person of the people. Like it's like,
Yep.
"Hey, we love her and you know what? Maybe we even love Joffrey too when he's next to her. Like, we'll cheer his name too." But Cersei's completely different. She's like, go ahead, say something bad. I have the mountain chop your head off right
Yep.
here, and then I'll laugh.
Dude, one of my favorite scenes, is with Littlefinger. Oh,
Oh,
talk about a oh, man.
yes.
Anyway.
He was another one. You love
Oh,
watching him die.
buddy. Yeah, yeah, did not love him. So Littlefinger, I forget exactly what he says, but he says something like knowledge is power. And I think
Yes.
he's once again one of the people who knows a little something something about what's going on underneath the sheets with her brother.
Yeah.
And then she has her guards
Yeah.
essentially
Oh, such a
take
good
him and
scene.
say, "Slit his throat." It's like, "Oh, wait, never mind." And then she, like, gives them a bunch of orders that they follow without question, and
Yeah.
she goes, "Power is power."
It was such a good line. I was like,
Such a good
ooh,
line,
ooh.
and I
So
think
good.
that was such a good representation of what Cersei values in terms of ruling. She doesn't want to be seen as the caring ruler.
Nope.
She wants to rule with an iron fist.
Yep.
She wants to be feared and no one question her and you do exactly what she says.
Yeah.
And that's it. That is what she wants, but unfortunately she forgets that the larger things get, the less you can control.
Yeah.
Because if there's no loyalty, you can't watch everything closely when you're trying to take over an entire continent. And
Yeah.
so the further out she gets, the less control. There are these other kind of feuding powers. And yeah, she just cannot get over this fact that no, I'm going to steamroll everybody around me. And at a certain point, that's going to stop working.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just yeah, it and that's what happened to her. Her it took the whole show, but her luck finally ran out. And a lot of the times though, she was able to just outthink and out manipulate people. And like
Mm,
one of the craziest scenes to me is when she blows up the Sept of Baelor with
yeah.
everyone there except Tommen. She's like, you know what?
Mm,
I know how to handle this. I'm gonna kill them all because it's after they've whipped. She had to go through the streets naked, and so she's like, yeah,
mm.
who cares? And that's also why she didn't mind the King's Landing getting burned by dragons. She's like, I don't care about these people. These people just threw.
And yet,
Yeah,
and here's the thing, she cannot she doesn't allow herself to fully feel her own vulnerability. So, like, all going through these trials and tribulations herself, she doesn't let herself feel vulnerability, and therefore she doesn't understand others. So she'll do things, and the destruction that she caused led Tommen, her son,
Yep.
to end his life by suicide.
Yep. Every
And
time.
she
Yeah.
just
She
could
just,
not understand
yeah.
how 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. Now, that's not to say that if someone dies by suicide that we should go and blame the people around them. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But she couldn't connect the dots to see that how awful that was for him,
Mm-hmm.
what that could potentially lead to for him. She was far too disconnected
Right.
to that part of herself and therefore to that part of other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a very, very interesting character. And in some ways I can relate. Um Now once again, she loves dishing it out to people who don't deserve it. But the part of her that I relate to quite a bit is I really want to believe in justice
Mm-hmm.
and things being fair. And I love the idea of someone treats other people poorly and they get that treatment and see what it truly is.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't to say that I want everybody to go through all these terrible things by any means, but her daughter being poisoned and then she poisons the daughter of the person who did it.
Yeah.
I get it in a certain sense, that sense of I'm going to balance out. You were saying she wants control over everything, but you can't control the chaos. I think that's an example of, yeah, she really tries to control all these different things. And if you do something to her, she's going to do it right back to you.
Yep. Yep. She
And
will.
and that part I found pretty enticing because I wish that we lived in a just world.
If only. It's one of those things like if you say to someone, like, I hope you get everything that you deserve. And
Mm,
it's like, man, that could mean, wow,
don't
that
be
was a
kind.
really sweet thing to say, or oof,
Oh,
yikes.
buddy.
Like,
Yeah.
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 Like you say that to her, it's like, oof. And yeah, because you know everything she deserved, all the people she's had killed, all the people she's manipulated, all the people she's done wrong, and it
She
all
was
gets
busy.
reflected because she can still, even after all the manipulation, she still realizes, hey, I'm still in someone else's world here. Like she did
Mm,
all this manipulating even from the beginning. And once Joffrey becomes king,
yeah.
she's nobody again. Because
Mhm.
once he becomes king, he's like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm the king.
Yep.
I'm the king.
And then
You can't tell me anything to do.
she starts getting replaced by Marjorie, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is very true. She does seem to get overlooked quite a bit, and I think really struggles with that. And yeah, I mean, like you said, in some ways she's very successful, but I'm a firm believer your biggest strengths are also your biggest weaknesses, and no one took Cersei out like Cersei
Mm-mm,
did. I
mm-mm.
mean, even the religious fanatics, she invited them in.
Yep. Yep. She invited them in. She hired them. Yeah, do this, do
She
that.
said,
And
"Get
then,
those people."
yeah,
And she forgot. She forgot that you
yeah,
were not immune to everything.
right. Oh man, yeah. That was a big one too. Yeah, she basically brought in the High Sparrow and his whole
Mhm.
squad of people. Yeah, she did. And it got turned on her because I think she at first she hired him and then got Sir Loras arrested for being a homosexual, and
Yes.
then
Mhm.
she got Marjorie arrested for lying for him,
Yep.
and then I think her cousin Lancel that she was sleeping with when Jamie wasn't around was the
Mhm.
one that got indoctrinated by that cult and immediately was like, by the way, I used to sleep with her and I'm admitting it and I'm sorry, but I did. And then, oh my God, she is so angry when she gets her. She's like, are you kidding me right now? Like, you can't do this to me. And then there's this, it just, it just kind of gets worse and worse for her because I can't remember the name of the lady, the shame lady. that's just
Yeah, that like
absolutely
nun style person.
brutal
Yeah.
to her.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things with Cersei is if you don't acknowledge your vulnerabilities.
Yes.
She became very confident, and that confidence led her to, yes, being cruel, but also being very successful, asking for things, demanding things that someone with less confidence might not have done, and that could be the difference between that power or, being Joe Schmo down the street.
Yeah.
But also though, if you don't acknowledge your vulnerabilities, your confidence can be false.
Yeah.
And so she is not willing to see her vulnerabilities or acknowledge any vulnerabilities. And then she gets really the most surprise she ever gets is when someone treats her as if she's vulnerable. Because you know what? Everybody's got a weak point, everybody's got things.
Yeah.
And it did not occur to her that they'll take out Marjorie. They'll take out the king's wife or wife to be, but they won't take out you?
Right.
Come on. I
Right.
mean, yeah, you're in a high point of power, but no one can have zero vulnerability.
Right.
But she's so unwilling to acknowledge those parts of herself by this point. She's built up so much armor that, yeah, I mean, she has the confidence, she really can put herself out there, but she has this huge blind spot
Yeah.
because she's not willing to really look at herself and say, okay, I am going to have weakness no
Yeah.
matter what.
I'm
I'm
not
going to have
invincible.
vulnerability. I'm
Right.
not invincible no matter what. And she just can't quite get there.
Yeah. And it's also interesting how different. I'll say, like, one thing that always sticks out to me about her too is how different she is between her two brothers, because there's Jamie, her
Oh
twin,
yeah.
who she loves and even still manipulates,
Oh, for sure.
even still
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
manipulates, but then she absolutely loathes and just despises Tyrion because
Yeah.
from the beginning, because she blamed him for their mom dying at childbirth when having him.
Mhm.
And it's just so interesting just watching how she will, like, she would have him killed if she
Mhm.
could. You know,
Yep.
she blamed him for Joffrey's death. And even before that, it was like this big question, like, who tried to kill Tyrion during the Battle of Blackwater? And
Mhm.
it turned out that it was Joffrey. But for the longest, but I,
But how he figured that out, he realized, "Oh, wait, you're too smart to kill me that way."
yes, yes, he's like,
It's
oh,
not you wouldn't kill me, it's, "Oh,
oh,
yeah, you're too smart to kill me that
you're
way."
smarter than that. Like, yeah, you wouldn't do it that way. Like, that's too on the nose for you. Yeah, and so it's just, what's also funny is, oh God, I cannot remember the phrase, self fulfilling,
Uh, yep,
because
self-fulfilling prophecies.
yeah,
Mhm.
because her and her friend go to that witch. I can't remember at the beginning of which season it is that they go to the witch, and
Yeah.
they get, like, she gives them a prophecy, and she's like, "Oh, you're not gonna marry the prince. You're gonna marry the king, and
Mhm.
you're gonna have 3 children, and all of them are gonna die before you." And it's one of these things, like, oh gosh, hearing that when you're like 15 or 16's got to be brutal.
Yes. It's a bit
But
brutal.
also, she literally did all of it.
Yeah.
She literally did almost all of it, was because of something she did. Because even Marcella's death was revenge
Oh,
for
right.
Oberyn
Yep.
being killed by the mountain.
I was literally sick to my stomach after that.
So, yeah, that was the first. that was really funny how that death got spoiled for me. It got spoiled for me years before I watched Game of Thrones because I was on Tumblr and I typed in, I was searching for Mortal Kombat fatalities from the new Mortal
Mm.
Kombat game, and his death popped up. over his death popped up. And I'm like, you know what? That does track as a Mortal Kombat fatality. So it was really funny how that one got spoiled for me. That was a
I
good
tell you,
yeah.
Pedro Pascal, he's
He's blowing
snuck
up.
into everything, right?
He's everywhere.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
he
love that
is
guy.
nerd royalty now. I'm telling you,
I
Last of Us,
know.
Game of Thrones, Mandalorian, Star
Mandalorian.
Wars. Like, yeah, he's just
He's on point, man.
everywhere. He's
He's on
everywhere.
point.
I tell you.
Yeah. There is something to be said. So in this world, it's believable. We're in the fantasy world. And
Yeah.
so it's believable that there could be fortune tellers
Mhm.
and I mean there are dragons for goodness sake. But yeah, there's definitely something to be said for self-fulfilling prophecies. And it's so unfortunate too because she's being told this fortune and she can't seem to bring herself out of it.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe it's she lost her mom at an early age and then she gets this prophecy. Potentially there are a lot of factors that maybe make her so protective of this family unit to the point that it's not even really real protection.
Yeah.
And I mean, does she even truly love them or care about them or really understand them? I mean, she definitely doesn't understand Tommen.
Yeah.
And I yeah, I it's so unfortunate because not only does that future play out for her, but yeah, she brings it on herself. I mean, I'm trying to think. So really all of her kids, you can rewind back and see major plot points
Mhm.
where she had a direct hand in it. So, because wasn't Joffrey killed because she essentially let his cruelty continue,
Yep.
and the Tyrells were like, the like grandmother Tyrell was like, I don't want my
And yeah,
granddaughter marrying that monster.
yeah. Well, she couldn't control Joffrey after killing the king.
Mm,
That's the thing.
yeah.
She killed she had Robert killed and was thinking, "Oh, this is my baby. He'll be the king and everything will be fine." And it's like, "Nope, your son's
And
an
she forgot.
absolute bastard,
Yep, she
literally
forgot.
and figuratively."
She forgot he's a shit and
Right.
a bastard.
Right. You forgot that you raised a horrible, horrible human being. That's
Now, to be fair, the genetics were not promising.
right. Right. We've
So
seen there.
so nature
Yes.
and nurture, there seems to be a whole family line of terrible people who struggle with empathy.
Yeah.
So there might be a strong genetic undertone in
Yeah.
addition to just he might have been raised in a similar way that she kind of treated herself and um you gotta allow some ability for being humble.
Right.
I mean, even if you're at the tip top. Now, I think a point was proven where Ned was too pure for this world, so he died quickly.
I was going to say the same thing. One thing about Cersei that sticks out that she constantly proves in the Game of Thrones universe is if you're too good, you will not make it in this world.
Right.
The only one that does is Jon Snow. And technically he didn't. He died, but he just happened to get brought back. Like, he didn't even survive. When you're too good,
Mm.
you're gonna get ran over, you're gonna get taken
I mean,
advantage
Daenerys
of.
started off really good.
And they wrote her horribly, and that
Yeah.
it shouldn't have
They did
happened.
her
It shouldn't have
dirty.
happened that way. Now,
Right, correct.
one
They were
thing
riding her in that direction.
they were taking her there, and
Yeah.
one thing I will say is she had just watched her best friend get killed
Yeah.
by Cersei. She
Yep.
had just watched that. And so when I look back at it, there's a part of me that like understands her, but she just went from cool, calm, composed to just, I'm gonna burn everything, like,
Mm.
way too
And
fast.
specifically, she didn't care about the innocent people, which was kind of weird.
Yes.
I mean,
The
they were
breaker
trying
of
to.
chains didn't care
Yeah.
about the innocent people. Granted,
Yeah.
no one, honestly, if we're being honest, if King's Landing were in any other universe, like if King's Landing were in the DC universe, Ra's al
Mm.
Ghul would have been burned it to the ground. It's a horrible place, full of horrible people. Like, King's Landing is worse. I would say King's Landing is worse than Gotham. I would
Oh my
put
God.
King's Landing worse
How did
than
you know
Gotham.
that's what I was going to say? I was like, so you're saying it's Gotham?
Just because in King's Landing, the civilians are terrible. The civilians are like, hey, someone's being shamed naked in the streets. Let's go throw poop at them. I'm like, okay, you know what?
Oh, Keaton, don't be innocent. Don't be innocent. That stuff happens all the time, man.
Yeah,
It does.
it does.
So, I mean, there's this thing that happens when you have just large groups of people. You get kind of caught up in the moment. They talk about groupthink
Like mob
and
mentality.
mob mentalities. People will do things with that anonymity, and also just kind of you see what's going on around you and you get pulled into it. And even if you're not okay with it, you're a lot less likely to do anything about it because it seems like you're alone in it,
Yeah.
surrounded by all these people. So unfortunately, I mean, this kind of stuff happens all the time.
Like January
And
6th.
shaming, January 6th. And shaming a woman for having an affair, that's a favorite pastime for people. You kidding me?
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, that's...
So unfortunately, that part, nah, that could happen anywhere.
Yeah. But yeah, but like throughout that whole show, it's like, oh yeah, the Red Keep is the castle in King's Landing. And every time they show King's Landing, I'm like, these people are horrible. These people are, they're not great. Like like I said, in the DC universe, I would want Batman to protect another city before he protected King's Landing. I'm like, no. And I know there are innocent people in King's Landing, but they are... I still never forgave them for cheering on Ned Stark's death. Like, yeah, kill him. I'm like,
that's another one. Yep.
Like, ugh. But you're right. That is the way of the world.
Here's the tricky thing though. So Cersei would say that's the way of the world.
Kill them all.
That is what.
Yeah.
Kill them all.
Yeah.
Kill them all. Show them no mercy. They will show you no mercy. Here's the thing though.
Right.
Mercy begets mercy. Lack of mercy oftentimes begets lack of mercy.
True.
And so what are you feeding into the equation? And that's what I think is forgotten. There are ways to break through that groupthink and those mentalities. Can it be difficult? Absolutely. Do you have less immediate, obvious control and power over what other people do? Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that comes from it. But she might have had a little less death of her family going on.
Yeah.
They might not have dropped like flies.
Yeah.
If she approached, and people tried to give her chances.
They did.
Many times people tried to give her chances, and time again, she refused. She said, no, it's always me first, my family next. And that's only half the family, the half I care about. And everyone else can go straight to hell right now.
Yeah. And that was her thing. And that was her thing till the very, very end. She ruled with force. And when the force wasn't there, she ran away with Jaime and the building literally came down on top of her. It was, and it was... A lot of people were upset because they wanted something more brutal.
Yeah, she got out easy.
Yeah, a lot of people wanted her to get what she gave. And that didn't really happen. It was something I do think it was a little poetic that her castle came crumbling down on top of her,
True.
literally. I do think that was poetic, but after
You
all
know?
the deaths she dealt out to the mountain and how many people she had beheaded, all these horrible things, and like all of that happening, and then she was just like, yeah, cement fell on her head.
And that's the thing is this would maybe be one of the last deaths Cersei would choose for herself.
Yes.
She died from the city crumbling around her, just like all the common folk that
Hmm.
were there too.
Yes.
And that,
That's a
I,
good
I
point.
think she'd rather a public beheading by far.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, in some respect, this might have been for her one of the lesser options, one of the last picks she'd have for her own death.
That is a good point. Like being the queen of the seven kingdoms and just
Mhm.
ruling with an iron fist and dying running away all alone with
Just under some rubble for
your
people to just, like, scrounge you out later.
yeah,
Mhm.
where is she? I don't know. Somewhere. Like yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
going down like that is pretty yeah, I can see what you mean there. Like that is in one hand possibly justice,
Mhm.
no epic funeral, no statue made in your name. No, yeah.
Not even a bunch of glaring people spitting at you.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they say? The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
Hmm.
And so she she always wanted to be seen as different.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think being handled with cruelty would have been preferred to disappearing under the rubble.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I will say, but yeah, I wanted to do her because she did play the game very well.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.